Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, picture this. It's June 17th, 1972. Dead of night, really. The Watergate complex in D.C. is quiet,
Right.
and there's this security guard, Frank Wills, doing his rounds. He spots something odd. Tape on a door lock. He takes it off.
Thinking maybe it's just maintenance or something left behind.
Exactly. But then a bit later, he finds another door taped the same way. And you know that little piece of tape? That seemingly tiny detail.
That's the thread.
That's the thread that starts pulling and eventually unravels, well, the biggest political scandal in American history. Just incredible.
It really is almost like something out of a movie, isn't it? A
Mm.
routine security check that accidentally, yanks back the curtain on this huge conspiracy.
Yeah.
And what starts as just investigating a break-in ends up shaking the U.S. government to its core.
Yeah.
And amazingly leads to the only time a U.S. president has ever resigned.
So that's really the mystery we're digging into today, isn't it? How does this thing that President Nixon himself kind of famously brushed off as a third-rate burglary,
Right, dismissal.
how does that spiral into this massive tangle of political spying, cover-ups on an unbelievable scale, and, a genuine constitutional crisis? What was actually hidden there? And how on earth did people figure it out?
Well, that's our mission for this deep dive. We want to walk you through that whole complicated, sometimes bizarre story. We'll look at the key moments, obviously, the people who played crucial roles, and lay out the revelations that came to light, the ones that really pushed American democracy to its limits. It's not just about remembering the what, but trying to grasp the why.
Yeah.
Why it changed everything about how Americans saw their government, and honestly, how it still affects things today.
Okay, let's set the scene. Washington, D.C., early 1970s. What's the vibe?
Tense.
Yeah.
Very tense. You've got the Vietnam War dragging on, lots of social upheaval, and politically, it's all building towards the 72 presidential election.
And Nixon's running for re-election.
Exactly. He's a brilliant political strategist, but also deeply suspicious, maybe even paranoid. The White House kind of felt like it was under siege from protesters, the press, political enemies, real or imagined.
So a pretty charged atmosphere.
Definitely. And that's the backdrop for the break-in itself. Early morning, June 17th. The police, called by Wills, catch 5 men red-handed inside the DNC headquarters at the Watergate.
And it's not just that they broke in.
No, it's what they had with them. Sophisticated cameras, bugging equipment. This wasn't your average B&E.
And then the killer detail.
And then the detail that really should have blown it wide open immediately. These guys weren't petty thieves. They had links, direct links to Nixon's re-election committee. Your committee to re-elect the president. Always sounded ominous.
It kind of did, didn't it? But the White House response was immediate damage control.
Right. The third-rate burglary line from Ron Ziegler, Nixon's press secretary. Just brush it off.
Dismiss it, contain it. But as we know, that was just the opening scene.
So the cover-up started almost immediately. But the story didn't die. Not a chance. And that's largely thanks to 2 reporters at the Washington Post. Young guys. Really Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein. They wouldn't let it go.
Tenacious.
Incredibly. They started digging, connecting dots, following the money, often guided by that famous anonymous source, Deep Throat, piece by painstaking piece.
It's hard to imagine the pressure they must have been under and what they started finding. It wasn't just about one break-in, was it?
No, not at all. That was just, the tip of the iceberg. They realized this burglary was part of a much bigger, much dirtier campaign of political spying and sabotage directed by people high up.
And for you listening, maybe you know the name Woodward and Bernstein, maybe Deep Throat, but here's where it gets deeper. They uncovered this secret White House unit.
The Plumbers.
The Plumbers. Sounds almost comical, but they weren't fixing leaks in pipes.
No, they were created, supposedly, to stop information leaks after Daniel Ellsberg leaked the Pentagon Papers. That was the official story.
But their real job
went way beyond that. This unit operated outside the normal channels, outside the law, essentially. They'd already broken into Ellsberg's psychiatrist's office trying to find dirt to discredit him.
Wow. So this wasn't about national security. It was political warfare.
Absolutely. Weaponizing government power, trying to destroy perceived enemies. It showed a, frankly, chilling willingness to ignore basic rights and laws.
So Watergate wasn't an isolated mistake. It was part of pattern.
A pattern, exactly. As the investigation widened, thanks to Woodward and Bernstein and others, you started seeing the scope. Illegal wiretaps, more burglaries, using the IRS to harass opponents. It was systemic, coming from the top.
Which is why it couldn't just be swept away. It eventually had to explode into the public consciousness.
Right, and the big turning point there came in early '73. The Senate decided this was too serious to ignore and set up a special committee, led by Senator Sam Ervin, a folksy but very sharp North Carolina senator.
And those hearings, they weren't just broadcasts, they were events.
Oh, absolutely. Huge television audiences. People were glued to their TVs day after day watching this testimony unfold live. And what they heard was just jaw-dropping. Layers upon layers of corruption, abuse of power, straight from the mouths of people who had been involved.
You had figures like John Dean, the former White House counsel, laying out the cover-up in meticulous detail. It must have been riveting.
It was. Witness after witness described illegal campaign money, political dirty tricks, efforts to obstruct justice. But then came the bombshell.
Yeah.
The revelation that nobody saw coming.
From a relatively minor figure, right?
Yeah. Alexander Butterfield, a White House aide. During his testimony, almost matter-of-factly, he revealed that Nixon had a secret taping system installed in the Oval Office.
Recording everything.
Everything. Every conversation, every meeting. Suddenly, it wasn't just Dean's word against Nixon's or anyone else's. There might be actual proof. On tape.
That must have changed the entire dynamic.
Completely. It was the turning point. Because now there was potentially hard evidence of everything people were testifying about.
Which, of course, led to the next logical step, getting those tapes.
Instantly. The Senate committee wanted them. Archibald Cox, the special prosecutor appointed to handle the Watergate investigation independently, demanded them.
And Nixon.
Refused. Flat out. He cited executive privilege, arguing, that presidents need confidential conversations to govern effectively.
Setting up a major showdown.
A massive constitutional crisis, really. The legislative branch and the independent prosecutor versus the executive branch over evidence that could potentially incriminate the president himself.
And this led to one of the most dramatic moments in the whole saga.
The Saturday Night Massacre, October 20th, 1973. Nixon, feeling cornered by Cox's persistence in demanding the tapes, ordered his Attorney General, Elliot Richardson, to fire Cox.
But Richardson refused.
Refused on principle. Believed Cox should be allowed to do his job independently. So he resigned rather than carry out the order.
Incredible.
Then Nixon went to the Deputy Attorney General, William Ruckelshaus, ordered him to fire Cox.
And he also refused.
He refused too, and resigned. Again, on principle.
So Nixon's burning through his Justice Department leadership.
Exactly. Finally, he gets to the Solicitor General, Robert Bork, who was then acting Attorney General, and Bork carries out the order. Cox was fired.
The political fallout must have been immense.
Oh, it was a disaster for Nixon. A firestorm. People were outraged. It looked like a desperate attempt to obstruct the investigation by firing the investigator. Calls for impeachment, which had been simmering, suddenly got much louder.
But the fight for the tapes wasn't over.
Not by a long shot. It dragged on for months. Nixon eventually agreed to release some transcripts, then some heavily edited tapes. But that just raised more questions.
Including the infamous gap.
Ah, yes, the 18-and-a-half-minute gap on a key tape recorded just days after the break-in. The official explanation was an accidental erasure by Nixon's secretary.
Which nobody really believed.
Well, it seemed incredibly convenient, didn't it? That specific conversation with that specific gap. What was said in those 18-and-a-half minutes, we still don't know. It just hangs there, a symbol of the deception.
So the legal battle continued all the way to the top.
All the way to the Supreme Court. And in July 1974, the court ruled, unanimously, 8-0. Nixon had to turn over the tapes. No executive privilege could shield evidence needed for a criminal investigation.
And those tapes, they contained the final proof.
They contained what became known as the smoking gun, the undeniable evidence.
What was it specifically?
It was a recording from June 23, 1972. That's only 6 days after the Watergate break-in. And on that tape, you hear Nixon talking with his chief of staff, H.R. Haldeman.
Okay.
And they're discussing how to use the CIA to tell the FBI, essentially, to back off the Watergate investigation, citing phony national security concerns.
So clear obstruction of justice.
Yeah.
From the president himself, days after the event.
Exactly. It wasn't just that he knew about the cover-up later. He was involved in directing it almost from the very beginning. That tape, released on August 5th, 1974, was it? Game over.
Even his allies couldn't defend him after that.
No. Support in Congress just evaporated overnight. A few days later, August 7th, senior Republican leaders Barry Goldwater, Hugh Scott, John Rhodes went to the White House
to deliver the bad news.
To tell him directly, you will be impeached by the House and you will be convicted and removed by the Senate. The support is gone. Resign.
And the next day?
The next evening, August 8th, 1974, Richard Nixon went on television and announced his resignation. the first, and so far, only U.S. president ever to do so. Gerald Ford took the oath the following day, an absolutely seismic moment in American history.
Looking back, the impact is just immense.
It really is.
Uh,
On the most basic level, it created this deep, lasting sense of cynicism and distrust towards government and politicians. That feeling that, maybe they're all crooked?
A fundamental shift in the public's relationship with Washington.
Definitely. But it wasn't all just negative fallout. It also forced some real necessary changes.
Like reforms.
Yeah, significant reforms. Congress passed new campaign finance laws, trying to curb the influence of secret money. New ethics rules for government officials were put in place, trying to prevent that kind of abuse of power from happening again.
And what about the press? Journalism's role.
Huge impact there. Woodward and Bernstein became icons, obviously. Their work really highlighted the power, the necessity of investigative journalism holding power accountable. It inspired a whole generation of journalists.
And it must have changed how presidents operated afterwards.
You'd have to think so.
Yeah.
Future presidents certainly became more aware of scrutiny, more cautious perhaps. The press and Congress were definitely watching more closely after Watergate. It strengthened, in a way, those checks and balances.
Which is maybe the most important legacy.
Perhaps. Because despite everything, the corruption, the cover-up, the abuse of power reaching the Oval Office, the system ultimately worked. It wasn't pretty, it was painful, but the courts, Congress, the press, they did their jobs.
And individual choices matter too, right? People telling the truth.
Absolutely. People like John Dean, Alexander Butterfield, Elliot Richardson, William Ruckelshaus, they made choices based on principle, often at great personal cost. That integrity was crucial.
So Watergate isn't just some dusty historical event. It feels still relevant.
Very much so. It's a constant reference point for debates about presidential power, government ethics, the media's role, transparency, all of that. It showed us how fragile trust can be and how important accountability is.
The core lessons seem pretty clear.
Yeah, nobody's above the law. Transparency matters. And ultimately, the power resides with the people and their institutions to demand accountability.
So thinking about all those layers that had to be peeled back in Watergate, the hidden truths, the fight for evidence, what does this deep dive tell you, our listener, about how power operates, maybe how truth comes out? And looking at today's world, what steps do you think are most vital now to keep leadership honest and transparent?